Thank you for joining us for this afternoon's Pear Deck presentation. I am one of two presenters this afternoon with you. Um, the presenters you have for today's webinar for Pear Deck and understanding how to use it to create interactive presentations are Monica Jenkins and myself, Kim Robertson. We're so glad that you've been able to join us. So, in order to fully participate in this afternoon's session, we are going to ask that you have joined the webinar by audio, so you're able to hear us as well as video. You're able to see what's currently on the screen. But in order to really understand how Pear Deck functions, we want you to also participate in a Pear Deck presentation as a student. So on a second device, the second device could be like your mobile phone or on the computer that you're on if you just open two tabs. Essentially, what we're going to ask that you do is on that mobile device, you can go to joinpd.com. And once you get there, it's going to prompt you to enter in a code. I'll show you the code in just a second. Or if you're opening the second tab, you'll notice that in the chat window, we've already put the link to just click on that link and it takes you into the Pear Deck presentation. Or you can also go to joinpd.com and put in the code. So I'll expand the code just so you can see, but this code is just good for this session. And it's just to give you an idea about how Pear Deck functions as a student. So the joinpd.com, either on your second device or with your second tab in your browser, is UTIWP. All right. So I'm going to point out that, and just at the end of or toward the end of today's session, you're also going to see how to use it as a teacher. So your students would join this way, or like if you're using Google Classroom already, you can give the students the link. So this would be the link that I've copied already and kind of put in chat for you. So we're glad that you're able to join us today. And we're going to take some time to meet to see who's already here in the group. So in the Pear Deck presentation, you should be able to see a slide that asks you to share your role, your school, as well as your favorite food. We'll ask that you take some time in the Pear Deck presentation to write down your role, your school, and your favorite food. And I already see I have 4 of 7 responses. So I'll give you just a second to take a look and go ahead and respond. And while you're doing that, I want to point out that on the toolbar down at the bottom, you'll notice that while the teacher is presenting, there are a couple different things that the teacher can do. So of course, I can keep track of how many responses I have, but I can click on Show Responses, and I can see that I have a 6th grade RELA teacher here from Cooper Lane who likes steak. I have a 4th grade teacher here from Templeton who likes empanadas. Excuse me. A supervisor who likes pickles, so forth and so on, but it's no names attached. So this is one way to see quick responses to a question. That happened to be a text-based question that I was asking you. However, if I wanted to see who the names of the responses were, I would click on something in my Pear Deck slide called the dashboard. So I can get to my dashboard from the black bar at the bottom and these 3 dots. When I click on Open Dashboard, notice I have 2 options to open it on a new device or either on the existing device that I'm on. So of course, I'm just going to open it on a new window. And when I do that, once it's opening, notice that the responses here shows me the names of the responses. And my computer's a little slow to load, but I can see that now the 6th grade teacher at Cooper Lane who likes steak is actually Renee. So I wouldn't recommend using the dashboard screen on the like projected in your classroom. But of course, it's something that you can use as a teacher to monitor who's saying what. Okay. But that's 2 ways that you can see your student responses while you're actually in the presentation. So again, that's just a quick way to show how we can use Peer Deck with a slide that I already had. So good to meet you. We're so glad that you joined us today. So we know that teacher presentations have come a long, long way. We've come hopefully from a place where a teacher wasn't just standing in the front of the classroom, um, kind of talking with a chalkboard behind them, because we know that that's not necessarily the way to engage students. And we kind of moved to a place of PowerPoint where we had, presentations, and some of us might still be there, but we're asking you to kind of take the next leap to join us with Pear Deck because Pear Deck is on a mission to help deliver these very powerful learning moments to students every day. It's a way to allow you to take any presentation that you've created, preferably in Google Slides, but it's to make every presentation interactive so that every student can participate from their device. Now, of course, the students in these pictures all have laptops. So ideally, if your student has a laptop, they can participate. But if they have a mobile phone, they can participate as well. But it's a place that allows your students to amplify their own voice in their classroom because we recognize that our focus as a technology team this year is around creating voice and choice infused learning experiences for students. And we recognize that Peer Deck is one way that allows students to do that because, as I mentioned, this is students' voice. Is empowered. They're able to share exactly what they know, even if they don't want to say it out loud in front of the classroom. There, you will be able to see that Peer Deck will allow students to draw. If there's somebody who likes to draw, they can type, they can respond in numbers. So there are lots of different ways for them to participate and personalize their learning environment as well as promote their own agency in terms of how they want to learn. They can learn by themselves, they can learn with groups. So there's a lot that you can do when you take a simple presentation that you already have and include Peer Deck as part of the learning environment. So the focus for today will be on these 4 points. So as you know now, you are going to experience Pear Deck as a student. And in just a second, um, you'll notice if you're still looking at the presentation you open when you join with the code, as I'm moving along, you're able to move along also because the teacher is controlling the pace of the presentation. So you're looking at what I'm looking at. But right now you're experiencing as a student. And then a little bit later on, I'm going to come back on and talk to you about the teacher tools and kind of how to get started with the Peer Deck and how to use it as a teacher. We're also going to show you some resources to give you some time to explore outside of today's hour. And then, of course, feel free to ask questions anytime you want in chat. So, we want to see how much you already know about Peer Deck. This happens to be a question that is a multiple choice question. So, while I'm on this slide, I know that on the right of your screen, if you're looking at your phone or your second tab that you have open in your computer, is asking you a question with 4 different responses. How much do you know about Peer Deck? So, I'll give you a second to choose your option. And then I'm going to take a quick look at the responses here. And I see out of the 5 people that responded, I have 2 that don't know anything about it. We're glad that you're here. And then there's at least 1 person who knows, who uses it and loves it, and a few people in between. So again, we're glad that you're here. Everybody who's here today will earn a premium subscription. So we're so glad that you were able to join us. Hopefully you can go share it and show somebody else when you get back to your building. All right. So at this point, from now forward, you don't have to move back and forth from screen to screen, or you may be asked to move back and forth between screens because we're now going to talk through a few things that you should be able to do as a student, but I'm also going to show you the teacher experience just a little bit at the bottom of the screen. So notice there's no judgment today about how much you know about adverbs, but you'll notice that this is a Peer Deck question that has some magnifying glasses, some color-coded magnifying glasses, and this is kind of a draggable question. So you can pick whatever icon that you want for your students to drag, but in this case, I chose a magnifying glass for you to identify the adverbs. So all you have to do is drag the adverb the magnifying glass over to each sentence and identify the adverb in the sentence. So while you're doing that, I want to point out that I've already showed you how to see how many people have responded. I've shown you from my toolbar, and of course, at this point, I'm looking at the teacher tools. I've shown you how to look at responses, but I want to point out that if I need your attention automatically because I notice that you're off task or I need to say something before you start an assignment, I can lock your screen. So when I lock your screen, you probably see that it shows that your teacher has locked your screen, right? But I can unlock the screen and I can also set a countdown timer. So if I click and hold, notice that it brings up either a 30-second timer, a 1 minute, or a 3 minute timer. So if you picked either one, a little circle will show up on the screen to identify how much time is left to complete that particular question. So as it continues to count down, and once the time is up, at this point, the teacher, the screen will lock and you won't be able to answer the question at all. So I just wanted to point out that that's how you use the countdown timer. Okay. There's also a feature on the toolbar that's new question. So let's say that while I'm doing this particular activity, I realize that I want to ask a question on the fly. It wasn't something that I designed automatically. It was something that I wanted to ask later. I could click on new question. And when I do that, I have the option to either put in a new question, a new question type with the same content. I can ask the same question again, or I can design a completely new question altogether. So that's all from the teacher toolbar. And that's using, right now we're on a draggable question, but again, whatever presentation you have up, you can amplify it with some interactive elements within Pear Deck.
So moving along. All right, so we're going to look at another example. This one you don't have to do, but again, we just wanted to show you some multiple options. So if we were continuing with our jelly bean jar, we can now ask for our answer that requires the students to provide more of a text answer and give us a fuller response on how they decided on the number that they chose. So we have that as an option as well. So again, this is just an opportunity for you to see multiple ways that you can incorporate Pear Deck slides in your presentation. So this one is one for labeling. So again, we created the presentation, but you can set up what type of slides and interactive slides you would like. So this one, they would be able to write or draw, and you should see on your screen, if you have joined in with us, you should be able to see that you can use a pencil, you can use a text tool, there's like a marker, so there's various tools that you could use with the students or the students can use as they try to complete the task. So at this point, just to kind of get a feel of where we are, you had a chance to experience some of the different templates with us walking you through. You should see a little orange dot on your screen, and if you would drag your dot to show if you are ready to move on or if you have a few more questions before we move on, just to get a feel of where we are. All right, great. So when I look back on our screen as the presenter, again, that's that WebEx screen, I can see that the people that responded are ready to move on. So that's wonderful, and that's what we will do. So the next thing that we wanted to show you is we have been doing this as a teacher pace so far. So there is an option to allow for students to move at their own pace and create a student pace opportunity. So we want to give you a moment to go through some of the templates at your own time. We said that we were going to do about 5 minutes, but I think we will, we'll estimate we'll probably do about maybe 3 minutes for you to click through and see some of the different examples that are there. Those of you that are joined in, again, if you want to join in, all you have to do is go to joinpd.com, and then when it asks you for a code, you're going to put in that code that's in the upper right-hand corner, UTIWP. If you don't want to join in and you just prefer watching from the WebEx screen, we will click through so that you can see the various student-paced examples, but I'm going to give you some time to do that as well. We're going to change our mode in a second, and you can see from our side that that's just going to those three dots and clicking on Turn on Student Pace. And so once we change it to Student Pace, you now should see arrows on your taskbar at the bottom that allows you to navigate and move forward. So we're going to give you about 3 minutes to kind of go through some of those different examples and see some more of the templates and things that are available to you in Pear Deck, and then we'll move to the teacher side.
For those of you that haven't joined, we're just going to walk through some of the different examples that you see. Feel free, again, for those of you that have joined on a second device, to move at your own pace until you get to the word stop. When you get to the word stop, you can close the second tab that you have open, or you can exit the session because we won't do any other examples in that particular session. So here's an example of a draggable slide. Essentially, you're going to see some dots with 1, 2, 3, and 4 so that you can determine the order of operations. So that's an example of a draggable slide. The next slide, and again, no judgment as to whether or not you know the right and wrong answers. We're just showing you the different activities that you can join within Pear Deck. This happens to be a web slide. So what happens here is there might be a link, a website that I want students to go to. When you enter a Pear Deck web slide, all it asks you to do is put in the link that you want them to see. So if you're following along on Pear Deck, you're going to see like a window open on the side that has a physical link in it that you can get to it. On my screen, you're only able to see essentially my question and the slide that I put up. The students are able to browse on whatever website that you want them to go to for the time that you have them going to it. This is a text slide which you've had an opportunity to see a couple times. For those of you that put in your name, not your name, but your school or your job title and your favorite food, this is the same type of slide. This is a drawing slide. Monica pointed out how to use the tools on the drawing toolbar earlier. Again, you're not seeing them on my screen, but here's an example of how you can underline examples of alliteration using a particular item on the drawing slide. You could determine alliteration. You can have, this would be a good way to unlock a prompt if you are having students unlock a prompt using the different drawing tools that are available in Pear Deck. This is, again, is an example of a web slide, which is essentially a website. It repeats, just a different way to use it. Incidentally, on web slides, you're not able to collect any student feedback. So there wouldn't be, periodically we've gone through and done show responses. You're not able to see any student responses from web slides. Here's an example of a text slide where you want them to write out a paragraph text response. If a student was actually responding, you were able to see them. Here's a multiple choice slide, which again, you put in the responses, the students see them on their screen, and you're able to see whatever response that students see. And I'm just going to kind of move slowly through to give you a chance to kind of take a look on your own and hopefully generate some ideas for how you can use the essentially 5 different slide types that we've explained. You can use them in different ways, so we're just showing you different ways that you can use them.
So some of you may be coming now to the stop sign. And again, as the teacher, if we wanted our students to direct their attention to our screen and stop the self-pace, one, we can turn it back over so that they are no longer using the self-pace mode.
And that's what I'm going to do now. All right. So for the next part of the
and One other thing that we wanted to point out, I think we showed, let me go back to the previous slide, Kim, just so that they can see. If you go back and you're looking at our presentation, even in the Pear Deck mode, we showed the countdown for locking, but we also wanted to just show the lock screen, what that would look like. So as a teacher, if you wanted to change it to lock the screen where they cannot see any more of the presentation, you should now see your teacher has locked the responses for the slides and no more responses can be added in at that time. Okay, so now we're going to move over to the teacher side and show you how all of this comes together. All right, so just kind of, we showed you the student experience first to give you an idea of the different things that you could do in Pear Deck. I'm curious to see what ideas you have so far. So if you can think of an idea before you even jump into how to do it all, why don't you go ahead and respond in chat. Again, the second tab that you had open that you used to kind of navigate our presentation as a student, you don't necessarily need that right now. So you can come back into the webinar itself and open your chat window so that you're able to see. And chat, let us know what ideas you have around using Pear Deck. I see this room where you want to just annotate on this slide. I got you. Student engagement and formative assessment. Ms. Fowler said identifying universal themes. Honestly, the opportunities are endless because you start with whatever presentation that you currently have, which you'll see in just a minute. The thing is, it has to be a Google Slide presentation. So you're starting in slides. It's very simple. If you have a PowerPoint on your desktop or somewhere else, you can easily move that over into slides. But different question types can be built. So that's where we're going to go now to talk about different ways that we can use it. So I see some new Teacher Academy. You've got some ideas around how to use it. So again, erase your mind as a student, and I'm starting you as a teacher. What do you need to do first? Okay, so that's where we're going to start now. This Ruben's got me in here annotating. Let me figure out how to get out. All right. So the first thing you have to do is you have to have an add-on added in Google Slides, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. So you're going to log into your Prince George's County Gmail, and you're going to, once you're logged into your Gmail, you're going to go into any presentation that you currently have in your Google Drive, right? So you're looking for a slide. I already have one open, which is the one that I'm going to use today. And typically, you're not going to see Pear Deck here the way that I see it in my drive. So I'm going to show you how to add the add-on, okay? And again, we'll share the presentation at the end of this webinar so that you're able to see it. But what you're going to do is from your Google Slide, you're going to go to Add-on. And then you're going to go to Get Add-ons, which is down near the bottom of this option. So once you click Get Add-on, it kind of brings you to this store with all kinds of free content. Some things cost, but Pear Deck, and you will have access to a premium account after today. So what you're going to look for is Pear Deck. So again, I went to add-ons, get add-ons. This looks like my screen is frozen for you. We're finally there. So I searched up Pear Deck and I see it. Once I click on Pear Deck, for me it says uninstall because I already have it installed. But you're gonna, where mine says uninstall, you're gonna click install. And then once you install it, it's probably going to ask you, are you sure you want to install it in your Google? So read through the prompts and just click yes and click OK in order to ensure that you have it installed. And once it's installed, you're finished here.
You don't ever have to do that again. You only have to do it the very first time. And I mentioned that today you get a premium account that's available for a year, but there's tons of things that you can do with Pear Deck even in the free account. So we'll point out the differences between the free and premium in just a minute. So once you have it installed, you still may not see Pear Deck in your toolbar the way that I do, but you can always go back into your Google Slides, go back to add-ons, and here's where you should see Pear Deck. All right, so remember that I have my Google Slide already open that I've already created. It's got whatever content that I want to build. And keep in mind that you can add other content on top of this if you want to and add other slides. So this isn't really a Google Slides class. So I'm not really talking about how to build a slide. We're assuming that you know that already. If you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to us afterwards and we'll help you more with slides. But this is expressly on how to use Pear Deck on top of slides. So what I want to do now is, now that I have my slide open, I'm going back to add-ons, back to Pear Deck for Google Slides add-on, and I'm going to click Open Pear Deck add-on. And you'll notice that what happens is you get this little toolbar over here on the right-hand side that allows you to add these interactive elements to your presentation. All right, so there are 3 primary sections within this toolbar. I'm going to come back to present lesson once we have things here. But notice that it has a template library, which I'll talk through in just a second. Then there's featured content, which is in this middle section. And then there's ask students a question. So the main difference between the template library is the template library has already built-in templates, like art questions that you can add at the beginning of your lesson, so forth and so on. Whereas ask students a question means that you want to take an activity that you currently have and you want to add an interactive element on top of it. So let me show you the difference in how those two work. So from the template library, when I click on it, notice it opens some more sections. So in the template library, you have lesson builders that you can use at the beginning of a lesson, during a lesson, or at the end of a lesson, or for specific areas of learning development, like for critical thinking, for social and emotional learning. You may have seen a question, how are you feeling today? So you'll see similar questions like that under social emotional learning. Or for subject areas, so littles is actually new. That came up within the last month. So if you teach a K-2 class, there's tons of different things that you can see here, or for specific content areas. Keep in mind that we're in the template library, so it's showing you already pre-built ones. It doesn't mean that you can't build your own. So let's say that before I even start my lesson, I want to do a bell ringer. So I want to know what do they wonder about today's topic? So if I click on this particular template, wherever I am in my presentation, that is going to be added to where I am in my presentation. So notice that the slide comes in and it has this toolbar at the bottom to let me know that this is a Pear Deck slide. I don't want to ever delete that because that removes the interactivity and makes it not a Pear Deck slide, right? So I can move it around just as if I would in any presentation. I can also edit it. So instead of saying, what do you wonder about today's topic, I want to say, what do you wonder about creating strong passwords? Because that's my topic for this presentation, right? So that's an example of how you can use a Pear Deck template slide. As you move through, you might see other areas that you want to add templates to as well. So I'm just going to kind of scroll through to give you an idea of different types of templates that you can use. So there's during the lesson. Is this statement true or false? You can see what these look like, and it shows you down at the bottom whether they're drawing slides, draggable slides, so forth and so on. So that gives you an idea really quickly about how you can use a template library, okay? So remember, that was the first section in our toolbar, and I'm just kind of clicking back or forward to explore the different ones. Featured content essentially is the same thing as what we saw in critical thinking. It's just a different way it's packaged. So it may change depending on a certain time of the year. So it'll show you different things depending on what they want to feature. But I'm going to show you now how to use these ask a questions, because I realized that in my presentation, I already had a question here what are some ways that people protect their things from being taken or used by others? So that was a question that I already planned to ask anyway, but now I'm thinking, oh, I can turn this into an activity for my students to actually write their response to. So instead of using the template library, I'm going to come down to where it says ask students a question. So these are the different question types that you had an opportunity to see earlier. I don't know how much you heard us, but it's what you saw. So a text question, a multiple choice question, one where the answer is a number, a website, a drawing, or a draggable question. Well, this looks like a perfect opportunity for me to add a text question. So I'm going to choose text. And it's reminding me of the different ways that I can ask this question. Is it going to be prompted on the classroom projector to see it, or for students? This is just a prompt for me. There isn't anything for me to do on the screen. It's just a reminder. But I'm going to click Update Slide. So whatever current slide I'm on is going to be updated with this interactive Pear Deck. So notice my slide didn't change at all, except now I've got this little toolbar at the bottom, which again, I don't want to delete because that removes the interactivity. So all that happens is when my students come to the slide, when I'm presenting it, they're going to see a little text box off on the side where they can actually write the response to that. I didn't have to do anything different. Okay, I'll show you how to do that one more time. For example, like this is a video that I already wanted students to see. So let's say that I know the link for the video and I want to make this slide interactive. My best choice here would probably be a website. So it's just determining which type of question I want to use for something that I already have determined, okay? Doesn't mean that you can't adjust your presentation. You still can. But in this case, I'm going to show you how I can add a website for this particular slide. And notice all I'm doing is putting in my web address. Now, I'm going to pretend that I know what YouTube video that is for. I could have copied it and pasted. I'm generally going to see a preview. So actually, let me find a better link. All right. So I'm going to pretend that this is the video that I wanted them to see. Notice it's giving me a preview of that page. I'm going to click Update Slide. So again, now down at the bottom, it gives me that little black bar that I'm not going to adjust to make it interactive. Now, suppose I change my mind. At first, I wanted this to be a website, but now I've changed my mind, and I really want them to draw something on the side instead. That's easy. All I have to do is now, instead of choosing the website, whichever question I chose, I'm just going to click on Draw. It's giving me my reminder again in May about whether or not it's going to be on the, it automatically updated. So now students can draw anywhere on the slide. So that's all I have to do to make an adjustment. Now, suppose I decide, you know what, I really don't want them doing anything except watching a video. I don't want any interactive element on this slide at all. What do? All I have to do in that case is this is the time that I would click on the bar at the bottom and delete it. By deleting that bar, it removes the interactive element from the presentation altogether. And that's essentially all you have to do in order to use Pear Deck. Now, if you forget everything I said, also down here at the bottom of this Pear Deck toolbar is how Pear Deck works video. You can always go back and see how that works. So I'm going to go ahead and add just a couple more elements to my presentation, just to be able to see different ways that you can use Pear Deck. So I'm going to make this a drawing slide because maybe when I'm teaching, I want them to say, which one of these things are you going to use to make your password secure? Are you going to use the month you were born, whatever? So I have a few interactive elements. The other slides are fine. They don't all have to be interactive. So whatever presentation I already had is still there. Okay. So now I'm ready to share this with my students, right? So how do I do that? Notice that I'm still in my Pear Deck toolbar over here on the right. When I click Present Lesson, this is when this magic joinpd.com shows up with the code. The code isn't something that I pick. The code is something that Pear gives me automatically. So when we click on Join PD, it's automatically going to give me that code as well as the prompt to log in. So I'm going to minimize it. So there you go. But notice that that's not the only way that students will be able to get in. And I realize the code is still coming up for you. And I want you to join in today. Just kind of take a look here. But notice down at the bottom it says give students a link. So maybe I'm using Classroom or some other way that I'm getting students to click on the link. I can just click on this link, which is what we did in chat. So you didn't have to type in a code. So this is how essentially your students get to it. This is how to use Pear Deck, and that's how to add interactive slides. So I'm going to pause just to see if there are any questions. If there are, please let us know in chat. If you'd rather we unmute you so you can ask your questions, just let us know so we can do that. I'm going to pause just for a second because I see we have about 10 more minutes. My computer is dying too, so I got to get moving quickly. See if there are any questions before I show you the next part. So keep in mind that none of my students are connecting, so I'm not able to really see any student work here. But I want to point out that when it's presenting, this is also where the toolbar comes in down at the bottom. So now that I'm presenting this presentation, if my Google Slide had any presentation notes, I'm able to see them down at the bottom. And of course, the first, I skipped it. But where it says 1 to 20, that's how I navigate my presentation. And as I move, my students move along with me, okay? The next option, again, is the notes. So if I have any notes from my presentation, that's what students are seeing. Now, I happen to be on something that doesn't have, let me go back, okay. So this is a question slide. It's showing me that there are no responses currently, but as students are responding, that's why I'm able to see them. I realize there's a little delay for you, but I'm talking about the toolbar at the bottom. Here's where I can click show responses. If there were responses, this is where I would see them. This is where I would lock screens. So automatically it would lock screens for students. Now here's a tip that is not obvious, but if you want to put a timer, you click and hold lock screens, and that's where you get your 30-minute time, your 30-second timer, your 1 minute, or your 3-minute timer. So all I did was click and hold lock screens. This is the new question. So on the fly, you didn't take the time to pre-build your questions, but you decided you wanted to add one on the fly. You can click new question. It gives you the option of new question with current content, re-ask the same question, or new interactive question, and you can choose from one of the 5 that you saw. These 3 dots over here introduce a whole nother piece, which is where you would end the session. Turn on student mode. That's where we had you go through it on your own. We also talked about opening the dashboard. The dashboard is where the student names are attached to their responses. This isn't what we recommend you opening in front of the room for everybody to see, of course, unless, it's not an answer that would, impact students and how they feel about what they see on the screen. Okay? So at this point, I'm going to end this particular session, and I'm going to show you where to see all of the student responses in one place. Like if you want to use this data later outside of this particular presentation, so I'm going to use this as my practice presentation. Notice that it's talking about student takeaways. Student takeaways is essentially a Google Doc that's going to curate all of your student responses in one place. Each student will have their own Google slide, which shows them all of your slides from your presentation, as well as any response they had. It also gives them a sheet to allow them to reflect on their learning. And I'll show you what the takeaways look like. So I'm going to keep that checked off, but I name my session. I'm going to save it and end it. And if I want to, I can return to Google Slides, but I'm going to close this screen. So the takeaways, again, is something I'm going to show you in just a minute. But here's where I would, since I published the student takeaways, here are 2 ways that I can share them with students. So if I'm using Classroom, that's the easiest way to share it. It'll share directly in the classroom. It'll allow me to choose whether I want to add it as an assignment, whatever I want. Or I can just choose the link. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Share to Classroom just so you can see what that looks like for those of you that are using Classroom. When I click Share to Classroom, it's going to open the option to ask me which classroom that I want to share it to. Slowly but surely. So I'll just kind of talk through it. So I have, let's see, my demo class. Okay, so I'm going to share it to my demo class. And again, I'm going to choose what I want to share. So I'm going to click Create Material. And when I click Go, I can share it with all my students, whatever students were actually participating. I could select just those students in order for them to see it, or I can share it with the whole class. It's going to be an individual takeaway for each student, but what happens is basically it goes in as an assignment or as material. When the student clicks on the link, if they were part of that session, because it captures their email, their Google account, it will then show them their student takeaway. If they were not part of that particular session and did not provide any responses, then they won't have a takeaway, and it basically will give them a response that says, you were not part of this session, so there's no takeaway for you. So it is a nice feature for those students to see how they responded to the different questions, and as Kim said, to provide a summary of just reflecting on that particular lesson. So takeaways is a premium feature. After today, you will have access to premium and you can publish student takeaways. When premium goes away, which will be next fall sometime, you will not have access to publish takeaways anymore since that's a premium feature. But while you got it, might as well use it. So here's an example of what a takeaway document looks like for a student. So it shows the student's name, and they're only going to see their takeaways. They're not going to see the whole classes. Summary. Use a space. There's always a summary question at the top. Use the space to summarize thoughts on the lesson, and then all the slides for that presentation. It gives them a slide and a space for them to take notes about that particular slide. If there was a response for a particular question, they're able to see their response over here on the right-hand side, and then again, more space for them to take notes. So this is a really good way for students to reflect on their learning for that particular day. Okay. So that's takeaways. The last thing I want to show you in the last 3 minutes is kind of how to get back to all of this. How to get back to everything that we saw. So we started out in slides. We went to the add-ons. We showed how to add interactive elements. We showed how to present. We showed how to end the session, and we talked about takeaways. We never took you to peardeck.com, which is where you would start. Excuse me. And which is kind of your teacher dashboard to show you all of your presentations that you've used. So let me log into peardeck.com real quick. Essentially, you're using your Google login in order to get into Pear Deck. When you first log in, you're on the home screen, and it's going to populate, you know, things that I have from my Google Drive because I've logged in as Drive. You can explore. You can also start a Pear Deck from here, but that's not the easiest way, so we showed you the easiest way. There's another tool called Pear Deck Vocabulary Factor, which is awesome. We're not going to get to that today, but we encourage you to try it out. But when I click on Sessions, here's where I'm able to see whatever session that I currently have open. So right now, I know that I have some sessions that are open. The ones that I've clicked in, I've closed them. But I can come back and reopen any previous session that I want to see from this screen. So I can do it a couple of different ways. If I click on the date, if I click on the session title, the file name, I can click on most of these things, and it kind of gives me the same option. But I'm going to show you these three dots because that's not as obvious. From here, notice that I have the option to reopen any closed session. I can name a session. I'm horrible with naming my sessions. I can archive a session. This is where I can get back to the takeaways, or I can export the data to a spreadsheet. So if I had any responses throughout my presentation, I'm able to, let's see if I can show you from here because I have data from this one. I can see what the takeaways are, and I can see all my data in one spreadsheet. So this is what a spreadsheet would look like, where it shows me all of my student data in one place. So that's another way to get all the responses in one place. So this is from the teacher dashboard, and all I did was logged in at peardeck.com. I went to sessions, and from sessions, I'm able to see a list of all the sessions that I have open. All right.
And so for your sessions, you also may want to name them by your class. So if you teach multiple periods or you're departmentalized, a good way to just manage it is naming the sessions by that particular mod. So there's a few things that we just wanted to point out before we close out, and we thank you for kind of sticking with us. We're going to jump back to our presentation. Part of attending today, as Kim mentioned to you, is the fact that you do get a premium license to using Pear Deck. So that's great for you to be able to use all these wonderful features that we showed you. We do have a slide that that shows the different options with the free version versus the paid version. So if you wanted to share with other colleagues, even though they didn't attend today, they could still use Pear Deck and just simply use the free version. But also what we wanted to, so this Kim's kind of jumping to that slide now just to show you some of the differences. Some of the main ones are some of the things that she's already pointed out, the takeaways, going to Google Classroom, those are all part of the premium part. The draggable type of and drawing slides, interactive slides, those are also part of the premium license as well. But a lot of the other templates are available in the free option. So one of the last things we want to talk about is showing you that as part of attending today, there is an option where you can get paid for the workshop, but it involves you doing a little bit of extra work. So we attended our webinar for an hour, but in order to get that half-day workshop, what we will ask for you to do is you're going to have to create a lesson, a Pear Deck lesson. So a lesson going whatever content you usually teach. Take a presentation, even if it's something that you already have, but you're going to add at least 3 different interactive question types from Pear Deck. You're going to have at least one formative assessment, one kind of open-ended question, and we're going to make sure, and you're going to also make sure that you have your presentation has at least 5 to 10 slides. So we're asking that you don't go over 10 slides, so we don't want like a whole unit presentation, but if you could share at least 5 to 10 slides and use at least 3 different interactive question types, and then we'll ask that you share it in Classroom. So what we'll do is, because right now it doesn't look like we are presenting for some reason.
So it looks like you can probably still see my slide, but Monica has some some internet issues on her side. So hopefully you're able to see my slides.
Okay. So it looks to join the classroom, there is a code. So you would go to Google Classroom as you normally would, and then enter in the code. And again, when we send the presentation, you'll be able to see this code available for you. And then once you're in, you have to post a reflection. You have to add a reflection of just how you plan to use Pear Deck, and then also submit your lesson. And we ask that you do that by January 21st in order to receive the payment. So after the 21st, we'll be looking in classroom on that date and kind of scoring everyone. And it's not a grade, it's more, did you follow the directions and include the options that we asked you to include. And then we will submit for payment after that time. So we have until the 21st. Hopefully, again, I'm sure you have a presentation that you may have created already that you plan to use with your students, or that you you have previously used. And now let's just try and add some interactivity to it and use Pear Deck to take it up another notch. So we hope that you'll participate so that you can get the half-day stipend. And we thank you for joining us on this snowy afternoon. We hope that you all have gotten home safely, but if you haven't, we hope that you have a safe travels home and get yourself home safely in this weather. And we will be in touch with the presentation that we shared today. And if you have any questions or follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us. But also, every school has a representative from the technology training team, and they all can assist you with Pear Deck as well. So if you even feel that this might be a great opportunity for some other teachers in your school, while we may not be able to offer the premium license to everyone, we can still come out and provide a training so that they can see how they can use the free version. So share the information about this tool that's available for teachers to use. And we thank you for joining us.